That's why we need each other.
Okay, that was really good.
We are the Thunderbolts!
Can't call ourselves that.
God, thank you.
I loved Thunderbolts. I thought it was fantastic. I rewatched.
Thank you.
And it was just as good the second time around. But I do have to say, where was Zemo? He's one of my favorite characters, and I always associate him with the Thunderbolts. Is he in the raft? Are these newfangled Avengers going to go get him out?
Look, a lot of people wanted Zemo. I'm aware of all the, we were telling the story that we were telling. I think what was so great about what Eric Pearson and Brian Chapek initially started with, that I thought was so smart when I read the first draft, was that it wasn't this kind of team that was being put together to go do bad things, which is what everyone sort of expected, that it was a group of contract killers being disposed of. And so given that flip, that changes a lot of the dynamics, of what, you might traditionally do with the Thunderbolts. This is its own kind of spin on what that is. And I did sort of, for all, I know there's a small sliver of people that were always like, not my Thunderbolts, it's not the original run. It's like, I get it. But then again, wait till the end. Exactly. They aren't either, so fair enough, you can still make the original Thunderbolts if someone would like to do that. Yeah.
There's still plenty of opportunities for that. To an extent, this film is Yelena's film, but I love that it balances the ensemble so well. And I'm curious what you learned from making this film with handling a large cast like that, especially when there's so many characters within this ensemble that people have strong emotional attachment to.
Yeah. I think that, the main thing is have an incredible cast. If you can start with that, it makes your job much, 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 much easier. And they're all so good and make the most of the moments that they're given, that you can have someone David was shooting Stranger Things at the same time and is absent from a pretty significant portion of the movie. But I don't think that the movie feels that way, because the scenes that he's in, he's so strong in those scenes and they form so much of the emotional core of what the movie is about, that you feel his presence throughout, in Yelena. And so it's about kind of weaving all of the character storylines together where, they're not literally all going through the same thing. They have their own relationship to a common kind of set of themes and stuff that they're going through, so that they each kind of speak to that in their own way. And that when they do get their moments, you feel that resonate even through the scenes that they're not in. And again, that takes great actors to do that. So that's all credit to them. But I think that was how we sort of, Yelena is our perspective character into this story, but everyone is dealing with a version of what she's going through. And that's something that she can't see in the beginning and comes to see through the film. And as we come to see that, it's through those other characters that she learns that. So no one is sort of incidental to the story. They're all part of that understanding.
And it works so well. And I'm also curious, there's a lot of fun visual callbacks to some of the other Marvel movies and other characters. I caught a few more this time on my second watch. What was your favorite to incorporate?
I thought it was fun. The stuff I had the most fun with, I think, was where there was this kind of meta level of things, when we were doing the benefit in the beginning, and we wanted these kind of old, relics of the Battle of New York. And it's there actually is a vault at Marvel of the old relics of the Battle of New York. Some of those things we created new, but most of those, there are these kind of hallowed items that you get out of the vault, and there's a person you have to go to who signs them out, and it's a whole thing. And is this real history, to this stuff, and the people who worked on it, like Russell Bobbitt, our prop master, who's worked on so many of these movies, that everyone cares about that stuff so much, and then we would, in moments where we were kind of designing a suit for the century, that's what Val was doing. She's trying to present a superhero to the world. And I think Kevin always wanted this sort of meta element to be in there because of that first Century comic that does that great technique of kind of referencing the old comics, which is hard for us to do in the movie. But we just took Sonia and her team's costume design stuff, all of her actual swatches when because we did the same thing. We had to come up with a Century outfit. So that's all that's in there. You know what I mean? That's just all from the costume department. We just put it in the background of the actual Century suit design. So anytime we could kind of just feel like we were doing the same thing that the movie was doing. We tried to kind of tie those two things together in that sense of history.
That's fun. I love meta commentary, and I did love the costuming aspects. My mom's a costumer, so anytime there's that
so
representation,
yeah.
Yes, yeah. It always makes me happy. I'm also in the Screen Actors Guild, and I know with the strike, a lot of things kind of changed and morphed after everybody came back and got to work. And I'm curious how Thunderbolts evolved from where it was at pre-strike to where it was at after the strike, because I think it's maybe just like a rumor that like John Walker was originally maybe supposed to be more of an antagonist. And obviously he's not quite an antagonist in the same way where we see him in the movie.
That wasn't a post-strike change. I think like there might have been an earlier draft where that was true, but from the time I came on, that was no longer true. I mean, the biggest one was the Taskmaster thing. You know, like when we came out of the strike, there were a lot of internal discussions. Just, I mean, you know, it's rare that you're about to make a movie and then you get an opportunity to take a step back and really look at it and you know, try to think about like what are the things you might want to change later. And a feeling had developed internally, you know, that maybe it felt a little bloodless, like given the characters it was about, you know, that it wasn't really like paying off the idea that they were these kind of darker characters or contract killers, and that you didn't really get to feel that in it. So that was probably the biggest thing, but there were a lot of changes made after the strike. I mean, we really like focused in on, you know, the void rooms and like what those void rooms were. Like almost all of those, I think, changed after the strike, and certainly like the escape through Bob's void, like all of that was newly added. You know, like I think, you know, we're sort of at Marvel, we're often kind of like prepping as you're writing, and this was a chance to like kind of take a step back and do that last writing pass that might have happened during production, to do it before we went back in and then really prep for that movie and go make it.
That makes sense. You know, something I think that's interesting with Marvel is there's not like a lot of romance in Marvel, so fans will latch onto chemistry between characters. And I think it's interesting with Thunderbolts. I'm sure you've heard it throughout the press run. People kind of like the vibe of Bob and Yelena. And it's so fascinating to me because it also happened with Black Panther, Wakanda Forever with Shuri and Namor. And I'm curious, like, were you surprised at all coming away from it and seeing those reactions? Or was it like in the day when you're making the movie, you're like, I can see people are going to pick up on just that chemistry, that shared kind of emotional, you know, trauma?
I wasn't surprised. I have seen the Bob Lena stuff. I think it's really cute. I don't view it as a romantic relationship personally, but I did want, I think we knew that like Lewis and Florence having chemistry, regardless of whether that's romantic chemistry or not, you know, like that relationship is so central to the movie that it's not a bad thing to have some amount of that, you know, like whatever I mean, we were very clear. There was never a discussion of like, is this romantic or not? Like, because it's so much about, like, I don't think we wanted to sort of cheapen, like, you know, that being there for each other in darker times and the way all of them connect to that idea. Like that wasn't what we were going for, but it wasn't something that like you know, I mean, you've got these great actors and so little narrative real estate, you know, to like build this connection between them before they're kind of ripped apart. And then they're going to have to kind of, that connection is going to determine the end of the film, that like building that, you know, there's getting their relationship right is so important that like, yeah, it was not surprising that, you know, if we did get that right, that people would like enjoy watching them together. And then, you know, the internet is the internet. So
yes, the internet is the internet. Which kind of brings me to my next question, because I love how this film handles mental health. And, you know, sometimes that's a really hot button topic, you know, crossing the IP, some looking at how some people have reacted to Superman. And it's like, these are the core tenets of Superman. Like, of course, the movie is going to focus on that. It got me thinking of like, inevitably when like an X-Men movie might happen, so much of X-Men is about like racism and like those kinds of themes. Was there ever a fear for you at all in approaching mental health and how it's being presented? Because it's done so well, and having those conversations about how it's going to be received, how are we representing this, you know, in the production, the pre-production, and then, you know, on the day.
I think the only fear was that if we were going to do something like that, it would be really bad if it felt reductive. You know what I mean? It would be really, and that was something that, you know, just like if we're going to portray something like The Void, you know, and something that people, if we're going to try to portray something that people really feel or connect with, it would be bad if we were also then kind of saying that there was a simple solve to that, you know what I mean? That it could be punched away or that, you know, and so I think that was really what we struggled with the most, was just how to kind of put something like that in a world where, you know, punches and, you know, there's action is a big part of that world, you know, like, can we do that in a way that feels satisfying, that also doesn't cheapen the core idea of what we're going after and make it seem too easy? But otherwise, no, I mean, there was really, you know, it was really embraced at Marvel. I mean, we were always pushed to kind of do something different with the film. And it really comes from, you know, like we talked to Paul Jenkins, who wrote the First Century comic. And I mean, it always was a parable for mental health. And, you know, he has his own view of Sentry and the Void. And I think we maybe took like a slightly different tack on that idea, but it's all coming from that same place and wanting to honor that character. And so it's like, there is no version of a movie where like that is your central antagonist that is not going to touch on that in some way. And so it's just about embracing that and making, you know, again, if you can't beat that guy in normal terms, you know, like, and it's going to be resolved on an internal level, then your other characters have to be going through something where they can relate to that character in some way. And so it came very naturally, like, from the set of characters that we were working with.
And it's handled really well. And that's something I love about comics, is that it can handle these big world topics. And the way that Thunderbolts handles it is fantastic. Shifting gears a little bit, I do want to talk about Skeleton Crew, because you directed one of my favorite episodes.
Sure.
I'm a big Star Wars person. And I'm curious, like, if you were to return to the Star Wars universe, would you want to do more episodic things within somebody else's universe? Or are you looking to bring kind of your own thing to that universe?
Look, I mean, that was this weird thing where, you know, John and Ford are my roommates from college. And so it was just very, truly bizarre, but also very fun to just kind of, you know, like, we made like little dumb short films every week in Brooklyn on a DV camera. So to be there again on that set with that level of kind of production and toys, I mean, that, I think, in some ways, I mean, I love Star Wars and I don't want to minimize that part of it, but I think, like, just getting to work with your friends, you know, at that scale, and to watch them make a show that they had put so much into and to help them do it, like, that really was what was fun for me. So, like, I would, any chance you get to work with your friends in that context, I think, you know, like, that's not something that doesn't come around that much. So, like, I would love to do that again, but I think that, yeah, that's sort of my take on that.
It's good take. I'm curious, do you hide Easter eggs from the shorts that you all kind of worked on in your project? Because I know they do.
I didn't do that, but I did put a tankard from Lodge 49 in Wyatt's void room, just for the Lodge 49 fans out there, you know, just since we were both working on this together, I did do that, but I haven't put, I think they're a little better at the Easter eggs than I am. So
I love that. I love callbacks to smaller projects and things that kind of forged creatives early on.
I mean, the main thing they do is in so many of their scripts, maybe not now, for a long time, like, they would just make all the villains in the movies named Jake. So including my own, like in Robot and Frank, like, the bad guy is named Jake. And I was just like, well,
so funny.
Ford did write the script on spec, so I can't say no. So fair
I'll have to dig around and see if any of the villainous characters on Skeleton Crew, there was a Jake somewhere hidden among them.
It's harder in Star Wars, you know, the names are different, but yeah.
Hey, I mean, there's Kyles in Star Wars. There could be Jake.
Sure. Don't encourage them, you know. So.
Well, thank you so much, Jake. This is great. I look forward to whatever you do next.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Maggie. Appreciate it.